Everyone talks about the fear of failure, as if it were the great villain, the monster that paralyzes dreams and prevents plans. But what if I told you that this story is all wrong? That your true fear, the deepest, most paralyzing one, is not falling, but rising. Because failing is comfortable. Yes, you heard right. Failure keeps everything the same. No one demands anything from you, no one envies you, no one expects you to go further than yesterday. But success? Oh, success is dangerous. It exposes you, it changes the way others see you, and worse, it changes the way you look at yourself in the mirror. It's easier to get stuck in a cycle of almost. I almost made it. I almost made it. I almost got noticed. Almost protects your old identity. That version of you that learned early on that you weren't good enough, that you had to adapt, that you needed to ask permission to exist. And that's why, without realizing it, you back down every time you're about to win. You sabotage relationships, abandon projects, and procrastinate when you're one step away from making a change. Your mind finds sophisticated excuses to keep you small. And it's good at it. Psychologist Gay Hendricks calls this the upper limit problem, the invisible internal limit that defines how much you think you deserve to be happy, free, or powerful. When you go beyond this ceiling, your own unconscious triggers internal alarms to pull you back. Because success demands responsibility, it demands transformation, it demands confrontation. Success destroys the passive version of you, and many people, deep down, are still attached to it. The brutal truth is, maybe you're not stuck because you're afraid of failing. Maybe you're stuck because you're afraid of finally achieving and having to bear the weight of it. Because success demands it. It demands that you stop being who you were, that you stop hiding, that you assume a new identity. And the real question is not, do you want to win? But rather, are you ready to let the version of you that learned to live in the almost die? If this question has ever bothered you, hold on tight. Because now we're going to expose the game your mind is playing with you, and you don't even realize it. We've been sold a lie so elegant, so socially acceptable, that we never thought to question it. The lie? That fear of failure is what holds us back. That we procrastinate, delay, quit halfway because we don't want to lose, because we're terrified of falling short. But what if that's not even close to the truth? What if you're not afraid of falling, but of flying so high that everything you've ever known becomes irrelevant? Let's be real. Failure is safe. Failure doesn't threaten your identity, it reinforces it. It lets you keep playing the role of the underdog, the misunderstood genius, the one who almost made it. There's no real risk there. People won't envy you. Your friends won't feel threatened. Your family won't question whether you've changed. In fact, they'll comfort you, pat your back, tell you it wasn't your fault. Failure gives you a soft landing in the arms of mediocrity. But success is brutal. It forces you into unfamiliar territory. You suddenly have to own your power, stand behind your choices, justify your wins. And you know what that means? No more blaming your past. No more using your trauma as a shield. No more hiding behind the narrative that the world is unfair. When you win, you're exposed. The world sees you. And more terrifyingly, you see yourself, without the filters of excuses. Take a look at Amy Winehouse, a voice that tore through time, a talent so raw it shook the industry. But as the world crowned her, she crumbled. Not because she lacked ability, but because success brought a spotlight so bright it exposed every unhealed part of her. The same fame that elevated her dismantled her. Why? Because internally, she hadn't caught up with the identity that external success demanded. This isn't unique to celebrities. Look at your own life. How many times have you delayed sending that important email? Backed out of that conversation that could have opened a door? How many times did you stop just before things got real? The moment the promotion was in sight, the book was almost done, the opportunity was knocking, you found a reason to wait. That wasn't fear of failing. That was fear of what would change if you actually succeeded. Because here's the dirty truth, no one wants to say out loud. Success isolates. It disrupts your current relationships. It forces people to reevaluate how they see you, and often, they don't like what they see. Especially if your growth highlights their stagnation. You become a mirror, a reminder of what they could be doing, but aren't. And unless you're prepared to stand alone, to be misunderstood, maybe even hated, success will feel like a threat instead of a prize. That's why your brain tricks you. It wraps sabotage in rationality. Now's not the right time. I need to be more prepared. It's not aligned. Sound familiar? These aren't insights, they're defenses, mechanisms built to keep you comfortably stuck. Why? Because your current identity, even if painful, even if frustrating, is familiar. And the brain would rather repeat a familiar hell than risk an unknown heaven. The philosopher Søren Kierkegaard said, "Anxiety is the dizziness of freedom," and he was right. What you feel when you get close to success isn't fear of loss. It's the vertigo of realizing you're free, that nothing's actually stopping you anymore. And that's terrifying. Because once the excuses vanish, the only thing left in the way is you. So we cling to the illusion. We keep calling it fear of failure because that's easier to admit. It sounds noble, tragic even, but it's dishonest. You're not afraid to fail. You failed before. You survived. What you've never truly faced is the psychological violence of expansion, the shattering of the old self that success demands. Let that sink in. And once it does, you'll start noticing it everywhere. In artists who never release their album, in entrepreneurs who endlessly tweak their business but never launch, in people who rehearse their speech 100 times but never step on the stage. These are not victims of fear. They are hostages of potential. Frozen, not by the idea of losing, but by the gravity of what happens if they win. And this is where we begin to understand the real enemy. It's not the outside world. It's not critics, algorithms, the economy, or timing. It's the part of you that doesn't believe you're worthy of the life you secretly crave. The part that whispers, "Who do you think you are?" every time you get close. But here's the good news. The enemy has a pattern. And once you recognize that pattern, you can outplay it. You can step outside the illusion. But that requires one thing most people avoid: a confrontation with your own identity. And that's exactly where we're heading next. Because if the illusion is the fear of failure, the real battlefield is what happens inside you when success becomes a real possibility. Success isn't just a milestone, it's a direct assault on your identity. Every time you move toward it, you trigger an identity crisis, a dissonance between the story you've told yourself for years and the version of you that victory demands. It's not your goals that scare you. It's the death of your current self. Let me explain. Your identity, who you believe you are, isn't just a passive self-image. It's a tightly woven psychological structure. A set of beliefs, memories, emotional patterns, and social roles that tell your brain what's normal for you. When something threatens to pull you out of that structure, even if it's something positive like success, your nervous system treats it like a threat, and it responds with sabotage, resistance, or withdrawal, all dressed up in rational justifications. This isn't just theory. Psychologist Gay Hendricks named it the upper limit problem. He observed that people often hit an internal ceiling on how much love, success, or happiness they feel comfortable experiencing. When life goes beyond that self-imposed limit, they unconsciously pull themselves back down through arguments, illnesses, mistakes, even accidents. Because to the subconscious, it's not better up there. It's unknown, and unknown means unsafe. But the concept actually goes deeper, all the way to your sense of self. Maxwell Maltz, a plastic surgeon turned self-image pioneer, once noticed something strange. After reconstructive surgery, many of his patients' physical flaws were gone, but their behaviors, fears, and confidence levels remained exactly the same. Why? Because their minds hadn't updated their self-image. They were living in new bodies with old beliefs. You can upgrade your circumstances, your income, your environment, but if your identity doesn't change with it, you'll unconsciously drag yourself back to what feels familiar. And this is where success becomes traumatic. Imagine someone who grew up being praised for being quiet, humble, invisible. That becomes part of their identity. Now fast forward to adulthood. They're offered a leadership role, asked to speak on stage, given authority. It sounds like success, but it feels like betrayal. Betrayal of the silent child they were taught to be. Their nervous system panics. They procrastinate. They self-sabotage. Not because they aren't capable, but because the new role threatens to erase the self they've been loyal to for decades. Now let's go even deeper. Philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre argued that the self is not fixed. It's constantly in the process of becoming. But becoming is painful. Why? Because every act of becoming is also an act of letting go. And here lies the trap. People crave transformation, but they fear the grief that comes with it. Grief for the familiar. Grief for the relationships that might not survive your evolution. Grief for the version of you that finally feels seen, even if that version is wounded and small. This is why success isn't just a win. It's a disruption. It demands an emotional and social rebirth. You're forced to detach from comfort, from identity anchors, from the old emotional contracts you've kept with family, friends, and even your own inner child. And the world doesn't help. Society romanticizes the glow-up, the comeback, the level-up story, but it rarely talks about the psychological violence required to sustain that elevation. No one tells you that your favorite cousin might stop returning your calls, that your old group chat might start mocking your ambition, that you might walk into rooms where people don't clap because your presence reminds them of their stagnation. Success demands emotional muscle, not just to endure the path, but to survive the aftermath. So how do most people cope with this identity assault? They lower the target, not consciously, but quietly, slowly. They stop pushing. They settle. They tell themselves they're happy with enough. They create narratives like money isn't everything, or I'm just not a competitive person. Not because those things are true, but because it's easier than rewriting who they are at their core. And this is where it gets sinister, because once you believe that your identity is incompatible with success, you'll reject it, even when it's handed to you on a silver platter. You'll walk away from deals. You'll flinch when opportunity knocks. You'll shrink in moments that demand expansion, not because you lack talent, not because you're lazy, but because your sense of self hasn't been updated to include a version of you that wins. You see, your mind doesn't care about growth, it cares about survival. And if being small kept you safe growing up, if hiding, pleasing, or underachieving bought you love or security, then your brain logged that as the winning formula, which means paradoxically, success now feels like a risk to your survival blueprint. This is why we must stop treating self-sabotage as weakness. It's not weakness, it's loyalty. Loyalty to your old self, to the stories, the traumas, the protections that kept you alive. But the same tools that saved you as a child can strangle you as an adult. And now we arrive at the cliff. Because if success is a threat to your identity, what's the alternative? Shrinking forever? Living in a loop of almosts? Being the person with potential that never materializes? No, there's another path. A harder one, yes, but one that frees you. It requires a psychological metamorphosis, a complete upgrade of your self-image, a rewriting of your emotional associations with power, visibility, responsibility. This isn't about adding habits, it's about becoming someone else, not in a fake, performative way, but in a grounded, intentional, unapologetic one. And that's what we'll uncover next. The strategies to break the invisible ceiling, not just intellectually, but emotionally, biologically, and socially. Because wanting success isn't enough. You have to build the identity capable of holding it without shattering under the weight. You don't break the ceiling by pushing harder. You break it by becoming someone for whom the ceiling no longer exists. That's the truth no one teaches. Most advice around success focuses on tactics, routines, hacks, schedules. But you've tried that, haven't you? You've followed the productivity blueprints, you've set goals, made vision boards, recited affirmations, and yet something still pulls you back. Because the real prison isn't outside. It's the version of you that feels out of place in the success you're chasing. So how do you fix that? First, stop chasing success as an external trophy. Start seeing it as an identity upgrade. Because no matter what you achieve, you will sabotage anything that feels incompatible with who you believe you are. That's why the work must start before the breakthrough. You don't wait to become successful to feel worthy. You build the version of you that feels safe holding power, influence, visibility before any of it arrives. Here's how. You begin by visualizing not the outcome, but the identity that outcome demands. Not I want a six-figure business, but who would I need to become to effortlessly lead that business every day? What would that version of you believe about money, about time, about rejection, about boundaries? Your nervous system must get used to those answers, because if it doesn't, it will see success as a foreign invasion and reject it. This is why the idea of expanding your comfort zone is more literal than people think. You must teach your body that being visible, decisive, and powerful is safe, that it doesn't threaten love or belonging, that it doesn't mean abandonment or isolation. Because deep down, many people associate success with loss of friends, of family connection, of being relatable, of being loved for who they were. Until you rewrite that emotional code, no strategy will stick. So how do you do that? One tool: future self-immersion. Every day, spend 5 minutes not just visualizing your goals, but embodying the feeling state of your future self. Walk like them, speak like them, make decisions from their perspective. And here's the key: not as fantasy, but as practice. Because your nervous system learns through repetition, not logic. The more you rehearse being that version, the less threatening it becomes. This isn't fake it till you make it. It's train it till you become it. Next, audit your emotional triggers. Notice when you shrink, when you soften your voice, when you backpedal on ambition, when you defer decisions. These aren't random. They're signals that your current self is resisting growth. Don't shame them. Study them. Ask what belief is being challenged here. Maybe it's, I'm not allowed to outgrow people. Maybe it's, if I stand out, I'll be attacked. These are identity contracts, and they must be rewritten, not ignored. And let's talk about guilt. Because for many, success comes with a silent weight, survivor's guilt. Especially if you come from struggle. You might feel like your rise is a betrayal, that if you evolve, you're leaving people behind. But here's the truth: you can't help others by staying stuck with them. You help them by going first, by becoming proof of what's possible. That doesn't make you disloyal, it makes you a leader. Still, you'll feel it. The loneliness, the whispers, the distance from people who once felt close. And that's why you must build a new emotional ecosystem around your future. One that normalizes your success, that doesn't flinch when you speak boldly, that doesn't downplay your wins, that challenges your excuses, not reinforces them. Until your environment matches the identity you're stepping into, your past will always feel stronger than your future. Let's ground this in reality. Meet Maya. For years, she ran a side business while working full-time. Every time her business gained traction, she'd slow down, get busy, get burnt out. But when she finally did the work, not on her business, but on her identity, everything shifted. She realized she was terrified of being seen as too ambitious by her family, of being too much for her partner. So she hid her growth behind excuses. Once she named that fear and confronted the emotional roots, her momentum exploded. In 18 months, she quit her job, tripled her income, and never looked back. Not because she worked harder, but because she became someone who no longer felt unsafe with success. That's the breakthrough. Success doesn't just require action, it requires permission. Not from the world, from you. And that permission comes when you decide that your future identity isn't a stranger, it's your new home. So what now? Stop rehearsing failure. Stop apologizing for your ambition. Stop dimming your light to keep others comfortable. You weren't born to live in loops. You were built to evolve. And the ceiling you keep hitting? It's not glass. It's a mirror. And when you finally break it, you'll realize it wasn't the world holding you back. It was the version of you that thought smallness meant safety. Now you know better. And that's the most dangerous kind of power.